I think knowledge work is going to be continue to be kind of chipped away at, as it were. I'm looking forward to the renaissance of craftsmanship. There's still going to be the need for operators or people with taste to guide these things, but there's just going to be far fewer people necessary to execute that. Imagine what our life is like when our agents are talking on behalf of ourselves. I think the 4-day work week is approaching much faster and sooner than we think. I think UBI, the universal basic income, is going to be a necessity very soon. And as scary as all those things are, our identities being around our jobs, whatnot, I think we're going to have to readjust how we think about what makes us happy and what helps us define ourselves.
In this week's episode, we dive into the intersection of artificial intelligence and creativity with New York-based AI creative trailblazer Tony Jones. From growing up in Ohio, his creative ambitions led him to New York to work in numerous ad agencies where he carved a niche at the intersection of innovation, creativity, and technology. Today, Tony is a co-founder and head instructor at the Creative AI Academy, where he's on a mission to help organizations and individuals harness the power of AI to enhance their creative processes. He also teaches AI design at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, equipping the next generation of creatives with the skills they need to thrive in an AI-augmented future. Tony brings a unique perspective to the conversation about AI and creativity. He sees AI not as a replacement for human ingenuity, but as a powerful tool that can augment and amplify our creative capabilities. He's a strong advocate for embracing AI to stay competitive in today's fast-changing landscape, and while emphasizing the critical importance of maintaining human judgment, taste, and ethics. It's a must-listen episode for anyone interested in where AI is leading us and how to embrace the unrelenting pace of the change that's now underway. Now, over to Tony.
Tony, welcome to the Impossible Network.
Thank you, Mark. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. It's been a while, and we both come from similar sort of past lives, working for big ad agencies, the IPG network and McCann and MRM. So looking forward to this one.
Yes,
so where
come
you...
a long way, haven't we?
Indeed. Yeah, long way to go as well, hopefully.
Yeah, right.
Where are you based at the moment?
I'm in Brooklyn, New York, in Fort Greene. Very, very proud of my local neighborhood. Mm-hmm.
But anyway, well, let's jump in and start with the first big question as to who you are as a human being, Tony.
Yes, Mark. As I was telling you, I listened to some other previous interviewees, and I know that I'm not the first person to feel intimidated by that opening question. But I might be the first one to have used GPT to help me answer it. I said, this is a big question. I've never had to answer for myself. Help me break it down into smaller steps so that I can give Mark a nice, concise answer. So I had a little bit of a dialogue and answered some subset questions. And, I think, and this is not a result of GPT, but I've kind of settled in on what makes me me is I'm a guy that means well. I think overall, if that were to be the one thing that anybody takes away from however a meeting went or however a situation is or whatever, I meant well. Father first, very, very motivated by fatherhood, by family. I value hard work. I think there's something interesting about sweating and trying a little bit harder. And in that same way, I love feedback. So me as a person is someone who likes a dialogue, who likes to explore things, who likes to be open to changing my mind. I think that's really helped me overall in my career, but also just in my day-to-day life, being open to feedback and to hearing from others and talking.
I think it's really interesting when you say being open to change your mind. I think we live in a world where, I can't remember, we were talking about this when we first jumped on a call about one of the great strengths in today's world is being open to changing your mind, being open to ambiguity, to be willing to acknowledge that you don't know all the answers, because we're living in such a polarized world with so many sort of differing opinions. And particularly as we're entering this new world of AI as well, I think it's a real strength to have that as a characteristic and as a principle through which you live your life. And something also is probably important as a father to imbue in your children.
Yes. Well, I'm always trying to convince them to listen to my way of doing things, but they need to be open to their own discovery and to changing their own paths. But yes, absolutely. And I think to your point, in this world, that we're in, that has led me to where I am today, which is to say, let me explore this and take this it's not a left turn, but it was much more comfortable as a CD in an agency world versus being out here and starting in my own business or trying these tools for the first time. That I think that value really helped me to get to this place where I'm comfortable and optimistic about where AI is taking us and confident in that way because I was open to whichever way the pathways took me.
So when you used ChatGPT to help you answer that question, what was the experience like?
It's about humility, right? It's about being humble and saying, "Hey, I this is a big question that I need to answer, and I want to do well. So help me break this down." And, I often in when we teach, we teach like have some humility because this is not a search engine; it's a partner, right? And when we work with a partner, we need to be open to being honest about what we need or from that partner in that way. So, I came in. That was my prompt. This is a tough question I need to answer, and I need you to help me get to a comfortable place. Where do I begin? And GPT naturally, and I also tried it on Claude too as well because they have different styles. They're both very powerful, but I wanted to make sure that I had a variety of interrogations coming back at me that helped me to give a more succinct answer. Again, not saying that was the perfect answer, but it helped me feel more
Uh-huh.
comfortable in answering a
Uh-huh.
really tough question. Yeah,
That's
sure.
really interesting. I might actually build that in for future episodes and get people to give me what their initial is and then get them to ask Claude or ChatGPT to provoke further introspection. It
Absolutely.
could be
I
fascinating.
highly recommend it. Yeah. I got feedback from
Yeah.
GPT, right? I said, this is what I'm thinking about saying. Where do I go from here? Where do I take this? So
Hmm.
absolutely. Totally recommend it.
Brilliant. If those are characteristics that define you as a human, who or what made you the person you are today?
I think my family in that way, but working backwards from my kids, I think COVID really helped me to realize how important that is. That what was I missing? What was I not spending time with them doing? That helps to really define everything that I do. But also, I grew up in Ohio in the Midwest, very countries living kind of a homogenized world, and I think that there was a change when was taken to a new school. I went to a new school from the elementary school that I was at that was a very good independent um, school that had a long history of excellent education, and it really helped me to take some skills with me and to reevaluate the world and actually be more open to the variety that is in the world. And I was from the country, but I also went to this school that had a lot of diversity in it. Now suddenly I was seeing not only just a diversity of folks that I could meet, but also thinking styles and a primo education in which they were teaching me how to be a critical thinker. They're, they my school was the first time I kind of learned the recipe of critical thinking. Right, this is very basic. The 11 sentence paragraph. I don't know if they taught you this in your school, but 11 sentences. One intro, three proof points, and each one has a topic and evidence and significance. Topic, evidence, significance. Repeat that 3 times, and then summarize that. That recipe stuck with me throughout many career changes or evolutions. Right, so even to this day, how do I formulate an argument or formulate a critical evaluation of any situation by first introducing what my hypothesis is, providing evidence to that, and then reiterating that at the end. That's something that I would use in a pitch for a $500 million client to something that I would use for an essay when I was in sixth grade. So I think that helped really to formulate the way I think and the way I approach my career, as it were. It's about not only being able to understand what I feel about a thing, but being able to communicate to someone else in a way that will allow them to feel the same way, or at least to observe my viewpoint.
I don't know if this is a symptom of my attention deficit and and distraction and uh, mindlessness or my daydreaming when I was at school. I certainly don't remember anything called the 11 sentence paragraph So I either wasn't paying attention or it wasn't something that the Scottish curriculum embraced, but I certainly could have done with it, that's for sure.
I don't think so.
It's amazing when we talk about AI and frameworks, and it sounds like a perfect framework, as you describe, to help you navigate any situation, from whether it be selling in an idea or convincing someone in a debate or even just conveying something to your children. It's a structured framework of thinking that allows for the a cogent and coherent delivery of a set of points and an argument. So it's, yeah, might have to, at this ripe old age, go back and start to learn about the 11 sentence paragraph.
Sure. And, and you can condense it too, right? A 30-second spot also has a little hint of something at the beginning, a little hint of something at the end, and because there's convincing in between, or, or even a website building, right? When someone first arrives, they have a sense of what we're going for. And then as they click through and feel the experience, they're also then, transformed through that experience. So that stuck with me, I think. My family lovingly called me Sony Tony because we had a Sony television. Sony, and there's no comment on the parenting that was in my household, but I did have a lot of time in front of the TV as a 90s kid. And that's where I kind of initially fell in love, not love, but I really got drawn to the idea of the advertising business, of the communication business, of how do I I like the long stories, but I like these little spots in between where you're trying to tell a little something and trying to delight someone, but also convince someone of something. That really struck me and helped to guide me to my college, where I was I was chasing creative writing. I wanted to be a creative director.
What were your parents' careers?
My father was in construction. He had a company that did large, like, factory builds, whatnot, and my mother was a mother at home with us. So they were both from, from my mother's father was an immigrant from Italy. My father's grandfather was an immigrant from England and Wales. That side of the family was from England and Wales. So, very working class type situation. But I was fortunate enough to be kind of brought into education at an early age, and and highly encouraged to follow those pursuits. Also, I wasn't really good with a hammer, so on the job site per se, I was more of a observer when my dad was trying to teach me some things.
So, I mean, I know you mentioned, you said you've got siblings
Yes, yes,
that you, yeah.
yep, older brother, 10 years older than me, and my sisters both 7 and 5 years older than me. So I was very luckily the baby of the family, which was highly recommended for anybody. If you have the choice, you don't, but if you do, all the audience out there that knows what it's like to be the baby, it's pretty awesome. The parents are done with all the rules by the time they get to you. The older siblings give you all the tips and tricks, and then when you get old enough, they buy you beer. Yeah, it was a very warm experience for me growing up, for sure.
So where, with with your mother and your father, not really being, you can describe them as being in the creative industries, was your curiosity nurtured by someone, either your parents or through someone in the education, a teacher, a mentor, or was it just something that was innate to you?
I would say that it was innate to me, as far as being creative, as far as, really enjoying art, drawing and painting, and the creative arts. Parents enrolled me in drama camp. So I always had a proclivity towards the creativity aspect of it. And they're quite supportive of it throughout. And I think my education was really where I was able to apply that in new ways, being able to, you know, when I ultimately went to college, I was a poetry major, right? I knew, my school didn't have a classic advertising program. We They had a marketing program, but my first statistics class, I realized this wasn't necessarily what I meant when I wanted to get into advertising. So I focused completely on creative writing And in fact, poetry was my major. So writing poetry, reading poetry, the study of the art of words, right? Not only does a word have a sound and a feeling and an intent, but sometimes a poem has a look and feel to it. Whereas what does this space mean between these two words? What does this odd break between these lines mean to the reader? What is this additional comma? There was a writer that we studied who would just wrestle with a comma for 3 days, like put it in, put it out, put it in, put it out, right? Like that art of craft, of revision, of feedback, again from my teachers and from my colleagues, is something that I really loved, and it translated well to trying to get into advertising, which was the art of word choice, the art of persuasion in a very small space and time. So I think that I would count my teachers at school for that mentorship, I think.
You mentioned being Sonny Tony and sitting in front of the
Yeah,
television, enjoying
yeah,
long form, but also short form. I mean, when you were nurturing your curiosity and investing in your creativity at school, what were those early creative ambitions? Did you have an idea? I mean, you came from Ohio.
yeah.
Did you have aspirations at that point to head towards Madison Avenue in New York, and this is going to be the big bright city you're going to head towards? I mean, there must have been a point at which your world view was being developed. Be
Yes.
fascinated about that.
This is in early 2000s, where there wasn't a big scene in Cleveland for advertising. I had a summer internship at an agency, and I'm grateful for that experience. But I knew that if I wanted to really make a career of this, I needed to get to New York. So I did that. I literally, like, it's like a right out of a movie. I sold my car and loaded up a U-Haul kind of thing, and used it for my first month rent, and became a waiter at restaurants, stuff like that. So I was pretty motivated to be in New York right after graduation. And a friend of mine he was a graduate student at Columbia and said, "I need a roommate in August. Are you in?" I said, "Okay, let's do this." And so that was the turning point where I said, "Let's go." My first job in advertising was at the Andy Awards, the International Andy Awards, run by the Advertising Club in New York. And that really just, I mean, I totally think about that as a turning point, because my job was to intake all of the ads for the show. So as a young creative trying to figure out what's the recipe here, right? What's the 11 sentence paragraph of a great ad? That was fantasy camp. I mean, I saw these ads would come in the size of refrigerator trucks, like BBDO India would send a refrigerator box full of print ads, or all these films that were coming in. I had to catalog all of them. So I see very quickly that there is a recipe for this. There's certain archetypes, right? There's certain stories that are told, but the craft of those was what something that I was overly exposed to very early on, and I'm grateful for it.
And was this after you'd done you were SVA, weren't you? School of Visual Arts?
Yes, no, I did the SVA while I was in New York. I did that at night.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. So this was
Mhm.
before you went to the SVA.
Yep. Yep. I got to New York, and it's like, I'm going to get a job in advertising. This was an internship available to me, and I did SVA at night.
I mean, this is almost like a learning on the job, really, through osmosis and observation.
Yes, absolutely. I was seeing just picking up the patterns, watching the films, realizing what these stories are telling, and what's a great idea. How are conveying these ideas? Also, being with the Indie Awards, I was in the room at judging, so I was having lunch with Jeff Goodby and Bob Greenberg, right? And then,
Wow.
yeah, at 22, right? Or
Hmm.
25, really trying to get into the business, and
Uh-huh.
watching them argue, seeing what was making it, what was not making it, just the sheer volume of stuff that was just thrown right out, just out, 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 like, made me realize also, or helped me to confirm my suspicion that there's a quality control here that needs to be understood and respected in terms of the creative process. So that I look fondly back at that as formative experience, for sure. And it's come full circle. I'm actually partners with the ad club now to help train agencies, which with AI. So that's 20 years later in the work.
Okay. Well, we're going to come to that.
Yeah. Mhm.
That packing up your life in a U-Haul and heading to New York, you could have pursued your life in the Midwest and just said, all right, this is where I'm going to develop my trade and my
Mm.
focus and take your chances there. But to have the tenacity or the will to actually say, no, I'm going to put myself into the center of the ad world and test myself. What gave you that confidence, or let's say fearlessness, to embrace the potential sort of route to failure? I mean, arguably,
Mm.
not everyone makes it when they go to New York.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. I had a stomach ache the whole time. Like that was like that whole drive was scary as heck. I'd always worked, so I had experience waiting tables. I wasn't really worried about. I already had a job, like a restaurant job, lined up in New York for day two. Right. I had a friend that I was saying, so I had some tailwinds, as it were, when it comes to that experience. But I did know, or did recognize, and back then that was a different paradigm. There wasn't a remote experience, right? There wasn't an opportunity really, if I wanted to really get in there, to do that from Ohio. I knew pretty quickly that I would have to make a big change if I wanted to get in the door at some of these places. So I was pretty motivated by that, clearly.
Again, you mentioned the early 2000s. The ad industry and businesses go through large transformative periods. I mean, all
Hmm.
businesses do, and particularly all businesses around the end of the from the mid 90s onwards, with the introduction of the internet and the World Wide Web. All businesses went through some form of transformation.
Yeah.
But I mean, I remember at that time, I mean, I was in London, working on Microsoft, and I think Bill Gates had just written this book. I think it was called The Road Ahead, and we were all talking about the impact of digital, um, and what the future was going to be like. And everyone was going, "Oh, nah, it's never going to transform." And remember doing presentations to clients around the IAB
Mm.
statistics on terms of ad spend as a percentage for online. And before it was called digital, and it was just online, for banner ads and that type of thing versus television. And you could understand that most people were like, "Nah, it'll never challenge television. It'll never challenge out of home or radio." But it wasn't long, and so you were right at the heart of New York at that time, when digital transformation was really taking hold of the agency world. What were your feelings? And given that you were all the work you were looking at when you were working for the Andes was pretty much traditional, but you found yourself on a track to go down to pursue your career through more of a digital, non-traditional route. What was it that led you to take that path and not go down the route that many people, even coming into the industry in the early 2000s, still went down the traditional path?
Hmm. I was in the room in the 2006 Andes when it was the first time that they didn't give a film the Grandy, which is like their best of show. It was Nike Plus, and it was a product, and
The
it
field band
yeah, and a fuel band, right? And I mean this was at the time this one was it was a special cut. You had to have a special shoe
in the shoe.
that had the
Yeah.
hole, right? And then it had, and yeah, fuel band came out with the idea of brand storytelling as a constant partner, or an ongoing dialogue. That kind of sparked it for me. I'm not saying I had the wisdom to see that Nike Plus was going to change everything, but I did see the pushback that was happening among the jury at that time. He said, "Wait, oh, no, we give the Granny to a film. No, this is a product. What does this mean? This is an ongoing conversation between a brand and their customer." And that was really interesting to me. So I took that with me. I don't know if that sprouted right then, but as I started freelancing and found work at McCann, I was actually at MRM. So there was the digital arm. So that, right, MRM. So I was already early exposed to these brand messages, but in these bite-sized bits, right? It fit well. We were doing early Facebook ads. I was the voice of Captain Morgan on Facebook as one of my first jobs, right? Doing banners, trying to tell little stories. I took that not to I didn't see it as too disruptive in terms of what I understood to be the recipe of great creative. I just found it to be a more confining space.
I think all of us in the industry, at some point, you're exposed to things like Gartner's hype cycle about where technology is going. At that time, were you aware or conscious of where things were going and that AI was on the horizon?
Well, I think it was quite a bit later. I mean, from my time at McCann or at MRM to like the the mid 2010s, the mid 2015s, I did witness I did witness the budgets coming our way. I witnessed the scopes and the strategy coming our way, that the digital agency was now the one that could actually prove who was clicking where, who was looking at what, right? I mean, general advertising was making people feel things, but they couldn't necessarily prove it until there was some sentiment analysis. But overall, digital was now getting its share of vision from clients and attention. So I happened to be there when we were kind of sprouting in that way. So it kind of grew around me, as it were. And then being able to then tell, like we said, more longer stories or more collaboration with a customer, that kind of naturally fit with what I was trying to achieve. There was actually a turning point in around 2015 where I met Dominic, who is now my partner at Creative AI Academy. He founded this innovation lab. And at that time, innovation labs were kind of a new entity, a new idea. Oh, let's have workshops. Let's create products for clients versus let's advertise the product after they've come up with them. And that really sparked kind of a new way to evaluate my opportunity at a place like McCann, where now I have access to these big clients and these big budgets to create new things from scratch. And I thought back to that Nike Plus brief that RGA got. So that type of that type of delivery, as it were, that type of brief was really exciting. I think we can do anything. Let's You want it to do this, we can do that. Do you want it to go over here? We can do that. Now let's try to make it so. But I think where AI kind of my first interaction with AI, as far as my understanding of it, was in 2016, 17, where I was doing one of those innovation workshops with my client, where we created a mailbox for the postal service that could act as a customer service representative. And we talk about them now, sound rudimentary, but we were using AI at that experience because we had to hand it over to an engineer. We had to say, okay, we want it to act like this. We want it to talk like this. Can you make it happen? Sure. Yeah. Give us a few weeks, or let's iterate. Let's work together too. So when we were prototyping, AI was part of our work, but it was one step removed. Right. But now in in 2022, in fall 2022, now everybody has access to it. This is where things got really exciting. Now I, as a writer, could go and use my communication skills to make things happen. Right. Whereas before I would have to not convince an engineer, but I have to translate that to someone who knew Python or at that time, right? So I think it was very exciting where I happened to be kind of at the right place at the right time. There's some serendipity there where these these brands were giving us money to experiment, and we were being able to experiment with new tools, things like computer vision, right? Being able to use the very advanced machines that the Postal Service has for reading people's handwriting to create a digital stamp, right? It's like, how can we eliminate the stamp? Well, we can actually use the optical character recognition that they have in mass from these massive Siemens machines that could really replace the stamp. So we built a prototype of that exact workflow just because digital technology allowed us to have these ideas and translate them. So it's been very exciting to be at a place like that at that time, and then to see where this is going, where now all of us have someone has an idea, can make something happen pretty quickly.
It's fascinating when you talk about the postal service, the USPS. You don't really think about it as an advanced technology company, but with
Right.
the infrastructure of what they've got, taking that and then using your imagination to apply it to different use cases is a huge opportunity.
And they
That's
had to, right?
fascinating.
They had to because
Mm.
they had a service mission and they had a footprint that was bigger than anything. So they had to have these technologies at hand to make this thing operate. So we were given a great opportunity there. But I think overall, I think, having met Dom there, doing these workshops with clients where we're just creating ideas from scratch in a very short sprint, the idea of this innovation lab as an offering was really also a foundation for where I'm at today, which is now we have the ability to iterate and generate ideas very quickly. But there's a recipe to it. So 10 years ago, 10 years from now, that recipe still exists. That formula still exists, but now we can augment it and get further along very quickly.
Okay, well, that leads us to the third big question. You are in this new journey and this new part of your life as a
Mhm.
co-founder and I think head instructor at the Creative AI Academy. So in that new role, what are you working to achieve or impact before you shuffle off this mortal coil?
I also looked at more. I asked GPT about Mortal Coil too. 'Cause I should know Hamlet. I didn't. Sorry, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah, I got that. Well, I think we're at an inflection point. I'm sure you've heard that. We've all thought that, and we've heard that from different voices. But I think there's an opportunity to take control of where this goes. So even though I had had experience with AI, there was a bit there where I was getting a little nervous, where GPT, GPT 3.5 came out, and I said, "Wow, okay, this is pretty powerful stuff and very easily accessible and very easy to communicate with." I had been proud of my communication skills, but wow, this thing is really intuitive. And oh no, I'm a writer. This thing writes well. It writes okay, but you can train it to do better. And then there's these others who are further and deeper into the world who are saying this is going to change everything. And I do agree with that. I think we're already here at that point where this has changed everything. But I ran towards it and I started using it. And I said, oh, wait a second. This is just creative direction. This is just communication. This is something that I know how to do inherently. I've had teams of creatives, up to like 20 creatives on my team, where I had to convey an idea and inspire them to generate new ideas. Generate is a deliberate word there, to generate new ideas through my skills or my communication skills by priming them with the right background information, by prompting them, by asking the right questions or asking them to push a little harder on themselves. So it felt like a very natural transition for me to take this on as from a creative director to a teacher in the same way. So I found that to be kind of what has pushed me and what is now motivating me is to take on that mentorship that I love so much about being a creative director in my career and turn that now on to folks who want to try something new and exciting, which is this new partner, this new AI partner. So I think what I want to leave this world with, and hopefully I'll get to last a lot longer than before. I'm pretty optimistic about where healthcare is going. What happens when scientists get a hold of this? They're already there, but like to be able to communicate naturally, it's very exciting for all sorts of different people. But in the creative field, I want people to feel, I want young people to be able to use this to generate something good, to take control, to decide where this future goes. So all that uncertainty that I was feeling before I tried it, before I dove in, like it went away after a few hours. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. So if I can expose more and more people to that and build this this army of the good side of the good actors versus the bad actors, I think that would be amazing.
Interesting, just as you're talking and saying that, just a reflection on the longevity. I mean, Ray Kurzweil, in his book Singularity is Near, talks about how we are probably only 2029 to get to AGI, then 2045 when we get to a point where he calls we reach as humans escape velocity for longevity,
Mm.
where we'll start to earn years back in life, which is just mind blowing to think
Mhm.
the pace at which technology is going to accelerate from where we are today over the next few years, and the opportunities that affords us. So it is an exciting time. One of the things when you talked about the early 2000s and coming into the industry and how it was changing. I think all the time people have talked about, through time, general purpose technologies as being a democratization. Technology has democratized the tasks for people. It's empowered people, whether it be from the wheel to the washing machine to the printing press to whatever. Yep. And if you think back to the early covers from Wired magazine, they talked about how it was going to impact film and music and democratize that and give people the tools to produce themselves. And people have, pre-2004, before Web 2, there was no UGC. And all now, if you think about TikTok and the impact that's having on the entertainment industry, all user-generated content, do you think from where you sit as a creative, with the skills you have and the craft skills you've developed through endless hours of observation and practice, that AI is just going to be another democratization tool that will unleash, arguably, a tsunami of creativity in a way that it will liberate people? Because I mean, we've both worked in the creative industries where you're creative. Oh no, you're not creative. You sit outside the creative department. Well, reality is, when we look at the impact of what UGC has, so everyone's got the creative gene in them. They don't necessarily know how to construct a sentence or a paragraph or a story or an argument or a 30-second ad. They have an idea. So I think be interested to get, as you as an inherently and trained and gifted creative person, and with your experience and insight into how AI works, where you think it might lead. And that was my very convoluted, probably more than 11 sentence paragraph.
Well, I think that is going to allow more people to express themselves in new ways. I think, like you already pointed out, what social media and UGC allowed us to do is to create something that didn't exist before, which is an influencer, which is a social media manager, which is a social strategist, if we're talking about industry wise, right? Somebody who's a media planner with all sorts of new media to consider, right? How do brands align with a content creator that curses, right? And that's important to their audience, but it's also important to the brand to get their message across. So how do you mediate that experience? I think as these new technologies allow us to explore and push more and allow more people to create, we're also kind of redefining what it means to be a final product, or what those rules should be. Does the spot need to be 30 second? No, it can be anything. It could be an entire series if you want. So what's exciting about that to me, as far as it relates to AI, is that many people who were before held back by the processes or the old way of doing or the established parameters that allowed us to create or not create are now being pushed away, right? To be able to generate a short film with text prompts and an idea is now entirely possible, and it's impressive. If you and I had this interview 3 months ago, maybe not, but but right now I'm watching video come into play and really come into its own. So someone who has an idea and who has the ability to communicate that, or wait, maybe they don't speak English. Okay. Or maybe they don't have a really good way. Now AI is going to help them to translate that idea into not even English, but be able to translate an idea into a functional storyboard. Or, hey, I had this idea for a cat that becomes friends with a dog, and then they open a lemonade stand. Well, help me draw out this storyboard. Help me think about what the story is. Help me find a tension in the storyline. Help me find a resolution and apply it to the hero's journey, whatever, right? Now anybody can take a stab at it. Now the craft still exists. The human element of it still needs to be there. I think, to answer another part of your question, I think, is now that it's democratized, what's going to happen? We're going to get this higher volume of average. And we've already seen it before. We saw it with the internet. We saw it with the number of, I have ad blockers on my web browser because the quality is not there, just because the accessibility is now higher. So I think that's something that will still exist. But the people with good ideas and stories to tell and taste are going to flourish, and more of them are going to come into play, and the competition is going to get a little higher. So I'm excited where creativity is going in that case.
Do you think it will be possible for someone, let's say a junior or an aspiring young creative or young creative team, to actually go in and, let's say, go to Claude or ChatGPT and assign a persona of a esteemed, well-respected, aged creative director and say, I want you to help creative direct me.
Mm.
So you talk about, well, everyone, you can be a creative director. You know, say, I'm a creative director. I know how this works. I'm going to use ChatGPT to do the work. What if you reversed it? Do you think that's feasible today or in the not too distant future?
Well, I think for that young creative, they're going to have to think about what are they bringing to that story. If they're there to get the work done, then yes, assign a persona, upload Ogilvy on advertising, or or feed it all of the Lions winners for the last 10 years. You could certainly train a model to imitate creative. Absolutely. What is the difference, and what should be I think, or what at least motivated me, is again that revision process, the arguing with other people about it, to thinking about it, to making it better, the feedback of collaborating with folks, humming and hawing over something, sleeping on it, giving it another pass. Like I mean, most of the creatives that I have had the best experiences with love that game, as it were, that push and pull. So with these tools being here, it's not necessarily there's a no turning back point. It's how are you going to apply your own personal touch? Where's your taste come in? And that's going to continue until we get to a point. If there's going to be a point where then if no humans are making the ads or telling stories, then I don't like to envision that version of the future. But I think as long as there's humans who want to make this and tell different stories to other humans, then they're going to have to put their own touch on it, even if it seems super easy. Right? There was a point where photography wasn't considered art. Right? There was photographers who had to push in the 1920s to have painters display their work next to his photographs, because he was trying to convey that actually the choice of taking a photograph, out of all the images, I've chosen this one and is telling this story, is something that needed to be fought for. So I think we're kind of in that stage where, well, if you can just press a button, then it's a creative as well. There's decision making, and there's a feeling that you're trying to evoke. So I think we're just all wrestling with that now because these tools are so impressive. But I think we're going to get back to a point where we're going to settle in. It's going to kind of disseminate back into our tools, right? We've been using generative fill, or we've been using like a context aware healing brush in Photoshop for years. Nobody said it. Nobody thought about that as cheating or as AI, but that's AI. So I think the creatives are going to, the tools are going to recede, the hype's going to settle down, and then they're going to be able to be off to the races. But the humans are still going to be the ones that make it so.
One of my previous guests, certainly polarized opinion when I put it out as a YouTube short, Dave Burrs, teaches AI on LinkedIn Learning and was a creative director actually at Ogilvy in London. And when I interviewed Dave, it was probably around March 23. And he said, look, this reality is when photography entered the mainstream, artists evolved. You started to see the emergence of cubism, abstractism, and all the other means, because when you can actually do photorealism through photography, it changes the nature of the way that artists express themselves through paint or through that creative medium. Now, it might be overly simplistic, but if you take his argument forward, his whole argument or his whole thesis or theory is now we're in this process of emergence of AI. We'll see creatives in all disciplines imagine and express their creativity in new ways that previously unimaginable, in combination probably with AI or as a result of AI. So he said we're just at the beginning of what we might see as this new creative golden age, which I think is it's exciting and fascinating. to embrace that we are at that point.
I would agree that point. And I think another way to look at the photography example is that those painters were now relieved of being accurate, right? Because those were the only ways we could capture what, you know, Prince, whatever his name is, looked like, right? You were in charge of making it look real. Now I can take a picture, you go do what you got to do. You can go have fun and try new things. So I think we're at that age as well. And I think that there's what's exciting about AI in terms of creative processes, the speed by which you can get to something, a first draft or a second or third draft of something, or volumes of ideas, which is again the same recipe that we did 20 years ago, which is okay, I'm gonna assign 3 teams. I need you all to come back with 20 ideas, and then we'll calm them down, we'll revise them, then we'll go back and revise those. And this is not new. But to be able to have AI help you to generate that first round of things and to then evaluate and push back and try harder, there is going to be a leveling up where the creatives are going to move all, and the the definition of creative is going to widen. The barriers of entry to creativity are going to reduce, and then we're off to the races. So I totally agree with that take on it, as controversial as it might have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit about the Creative AI Academy and how it works?
Yes. So we're in the change management business overall. I think at 10,000 feet, which is like you're a company that wants to take this on. Maybe your creatives are asking about it. Maybe your strategists are asking about it, but also it's not only a design or a creative, it's where everyone now has an opportunity to offload some of their work or to automate some of the things or to improve the quality of the things that they're doing on a day-to-day basis and spend more time being the best at what they're at. So I'm looking forward to, and this is not very far off, Copilot fixing email, like just fixing because it's just so freaking broken, right? So imagine what now someone in HR can do to rethink companies' culture when they have time to offload some of those automations. What happens when a teacher? I mean, we have clients that are faculty. What happens when a teacher can turn their syllabus into a GPT that can answer those mundane questions that a student might ask because they didn't bother reading the syllabus? Well, now they can spend more time. Or what happens when an engineer who's researching a new way to build a bridge can now dive into those research papers that might have taken her 3 weeks to dig through to find those nuggets and really move forward and actually start to build. So we try to instill that across the board. It might say creative AI, but what we found is that our clients are coming to us from all sorts of angles, and that the recipe, what happens when you get an assignment to when do you have to deliver it, doesn't change. And that recipe can be different forever, whatever your deliverable is. But what you have done in the past is not necessarily going to go away, but how you do it is evolving. So we try to instill this openness, this understanding of your inherent skills, your inherent job role is still here, and you are the most qualified person to operate AI in that mindset or with that tool by your side. And now we're going to show you how to be the one that leads your company this way. So whereas we might initially in like the first day of like a workshop, get people saying, really, I'm really worried, or this is here to take my job. When we find by the end of the workshop, they say, oh, my job is now awesome. So we found that what we're trying to do through not only just through that mindset change, but through practicality. So one thing that we found has been very beneficial for us is bringing in SMEs who teach the classes, right? So we have a team of instructors. So if you are signing up for a class that is for strategy with AI, then Dr. Golden's going to do it because he's a strategist. He's a brand strategist and he uses AI so he can talk the talk and walk the walk with you. If you're a UX designer, we have Irina Kelly who so a creative director, I'll take that class. So we found that there's room for everybody, and that has allowed us to really seeing all how AI is changing all sorts of different industries, not just creative. So if I could go back and rename the company like a year ago, I still like it, but I'm just saying, I think there's an opportunity for us to be even broader in that sense. And it's become we've become very busy.
There's clearly a demand in the market for this. Yet a lot of the data out there is suggesting that companies are still slow to adopt or nervous to adopt for a number of reasons. What's your sense of why there's a lag in terms of the published data of companies, or whether it be enterprises or whether it's small and medium-sized businesses are the ones that are the laggards?
I think they're right to be cautious, right? I think that if we look at the legal ramifications, if we look at the IP that has been scraped to create these models, if we look at where's my data going, right? And sometimes it's as simple. There's a toggle on GPT where it says you can't have my data. Not many people know about it, and that's fine. And if you're running a large organization, you have to be careful, of course, adopting new technologies, right? I mean, there was so many companies that were hesitant to go to the cloud, right, as it were. Or they had their systems, they had their tapes, they had their back room, everything was safe and secure. One good fire wet the whole thing out, but at least I know where everything is, right? I think we're at that stage now where they're going to see the efficiencies from others who are a little bit more willing to take those paths forward, and it's going to just kind of break open the floodgates. And then when these offerings can promise safety and data security and IP security, then I think we're going to be off to the races. I think companies like Adobe are very smart for having introduced AI in a setting in which they've trained their models all on licensed work, for example, or offering indemnity for any sort of IP issues. I think they also understand that their clients are enterprise, so they knew that from the get-go. They also did a good job of turning a lot of these things that were text prompts. I mean, I love Midjourney, they finally have a new interface, which is great. But working with Midjourney on Discord was like, you had to be a coder to learn how to generate these images. And they're beautiful. I mean, their model is amazing because it scraped the entire internet. But I think, Firefly is catching up in terms of quality and output. And I think we're all going to reach a point of like a plateau of quality in which we're not going to have to worry about which provider it is, only who has the best interface and tools. So I think that's going to help break that dam, as it were. And then I think also there's been a change in openness. If I was running a workshop a year ago and I said, raise your hand if you openly admit using GPT at work, no one wanted to raise their hand, right? And now it's going to be a requirement on your skill set. Now it's going to be like, oh, you don't use the internet? Oh, okay. Well, I think that's where we're going, where this is going to be kind of, again, a natural part of our work. And when the bigger companies take over and establish themselves as users of AI in their organizations, and then the other companies see how well they're doing resource-wise, how well they're doing with new innovations, then it's going to take off, I think, much faster.
Just to throw in a question that's not on that, I didn't say any of the questions, but as you're talking, leads me there. I spend, and you probably spend even more time trying to keep up with just the pace of the changes occurring. And even last week with the launch of Llama 3 from Meta, and whether you're looking at what's about to hopefully be released from OpenAI or Anthropic's Claude 3.5, and the pace of which all these updates are happening, and Perplexity, there seem to be so many models out there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, from your observations, the way that the companies are embracing this, we'll see a shakeout, or you'll see maybe similar to the way that we witness with digital tools, you'll start to see that enterprises will say, we'll only work with Microsoft's Copilot, or we'll only work with Anthropic. The consumer side of things, and consumers will just default, because it's baked into their tools already, work with Meta's Llama tools. Or do you think there'll be a sort of a different structure of how companies decide on which tool set to work with? Because there has to be some standardization. Because if everyone's being more open now, saying, yes, I use it at work, I don't think you can have, personally, this is my feeling, I can't see you can just have a free-for-all where companies go, whether you're an agency or you're L'Oreal, saying, yeah, you can use if you want to use Anthropic or you want to use Perplexity, and it's a free-for-all to which tools you use, you think there's got to be some guardrails established. And I don't feel from what I'm observing, we're anywhere near that yet in terms of the standardization of the tool set that companies allow
Mm.
their employees to embrace.
I think I would push back that I'm starting to see that pathway, right? I mean, if we were talking about is OpenAI a separate company? No, it's Microsoft is running that company essentially, right? All right. Microsoft is bringing OpenAI into Copilot in a safe space in which organizations and enterprises can feel confident. I know Microsoft Suite. I know that I have this agreement with them. I know that if we add this little button there that has AI in it, then I can feel confident that it's okay. I think that Google has done a great job with us as in exchange for free mail, free calendars, free YouTube, free in exchange for our data, allowing us to use these tools and rely on them very heavily. So adding AI naturally in little bits here and there is going to kind of permeate. So I suspect that a lot of the players that we're seeing that are popping up are either going to get absorbed because they have something new that these companies want to buy into, or they're going to grow rapidly to be strong competitors, right? I think like a company like Sora, I think OpenAI Sora is pretty impressive, but I think Runway is doing a better job of actually having an interface that editors and creatives who work with video know how to use. So they actually might be a new player that emerges. But I would suspect that overall we're going to get kind of the same large players because they have the resources to put out there, they have the reach to get it into our hands. And as far as the pace and the change, I think that and from my view, that the idea of communicating with an LLM, a text LLM, is kind of uniform across Claude, Llama, or GPT, right? Being able to
Gemini.
communicate an idea, and Gemini, being able to talk about whatever you're talking about and have it infer back is going to be a point. Again, like we're going to get to a point where it's just so casual and easy for us that you could use any one of these tools. And I don't think then they become parody and they might just recede into the tools that we use already.
You, aside from the Creative AI Academy, you're also, as you mentioned earlier about going full circle to doing teaching, you're also an instructor in AI design at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn.
Yes.
Where you got an AI design certificate course. Given that's all about design, presumably what you're doing with that is preparing the next generation of creatives to use these tools to the maximum effect and impact. One, I suppose, how did that emerge and how different is it from the way that you're approaching the teachings and the coaching you're doing with the AI Academy?
Well, they're actually not that different if we were to think about it. One thing about the certificate course is it's 84 hours, 12 weeks, 6 hours, right? So it's a lot. We cover a lot, but it's not enough either, right? Because we have this breadth of time. We're diving into ethics for a whole week. We're diving into creating a GPT for a whole week. We're diving into design processes in which you train a model to iterate a bunch of ideas. We teach people how to create synthetic users to evaluate their ideas. The students by the end of the class will have to identify a problem, a solution, a market opportunity, design thing, show a prototype for it, and make a campaign for it in the matter of a few weeks from scratch, all with AI throughout the process. So it's exciting that I have these students who are coming from all different angles too. It's not just graphic designers. I have interior designer students. I have UX designers. I have graphic designers. I have filmmakers. So they're all bringing their own flavor to this class. And we're exploring these topics together. I think one of the benefits of having a 12-week class is that we have a lot of time to explore. The other part is by the 12th week, we have to reevaluate what we learned in week one because it's moving so fast. Yeah. It's pretty exciting. You're like, there's a new tool out. Okay, there's this new tool came out. Can we all tonight go home and try it and just come back with what you found? So I've found that it's been really beneficial to the corporate training in that I have now a team of people who are eager to try these things and experiment with them, and then I can take that back into the corporate training. So but with the So I would say that the difference between the experience is not that different in terms of we're all experimenting together. We're trying it. We're not just talking about it. We're actually creating things from it. So I think it's exciting that there's parallels there and actually makes both jobs a little more synchronous in that way.
Are there any common misconceptions about AI and creativity that you're actually encountering from the teaching at Pratt or with your coaching clients?
Yeah, I think writers need to give it a second chance. I think writers need to understand that you're right. It's not, you can probably write it better in the first draft, whatnot. But I found tools, and this one is kind of old in terms of AI, but text effects from Google, which is it's like a subset of their Google Labs. Again, it's like over a year old, so might as well be 85. But what it does is it allows a writer to play with words in new ways. It has a different set of instructions or a different set of buttons that you can press to like explode a word or create rhymes or to explore analogies. Anyhow, I think the misconception of, well, this is going to replace writing or this is going to replace critical thinking is off. I think what we found working with our faculty clients is that the curriculum is now going to be more focused on what is your personal idea, what argument are you trying to make, what criticism do you have of this work, what ideas do you have. So I think that there is the misconception that we're not going to have to think anymore is off. I think we need to we need to be the human that is related to these tools in order to really make them sing. So, and here's an example. The first time I used Midjourney, I sat down with my son and said, "Hey, there's this thing that if you just say what you want, it'll make an image." He's like, "What?" I'm like, "What do you want? Anything. Think of anything." And he said, "Steampunk dog." And he didn't hesitate. He didn't think twice about it. He wasn't like, He said, "Steampunk dog." I'm like, "Okay, steampunk dog." And sure enough, it was like Midjourney 4, so it was a little wonky looking, but it was a dog with with brass glasses and a leathered coat and in front of a laboratory. And sure enough, you know, 30 seconds later, we were looking at 4 options for a steampunk dog. And that clicked with me immediately in that these tools are very passive, but the human who juxtaposed these two things very quickly was be able to create something new. So I try to like reiterate that to the students, to even to the corporate teachers of like with that story that this is you activating this. And so I think they need to understand, I think a misconception is that it's doing the work for you, but no, you have to be the one to create this. And so I'm looking forward to what other things people want to juxtapose for the AI to help them envision.
What's your relationship with it as a creative? I mean, being early in recognizing the power and potential of this technology, and also aligned to that. Oh, I'm assuming in a way it's changed the way you think about your approach to creativity and giving direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's immediately apparent to me that those first drafts, those first rounds of any idea can just come so quickly. And that's always the process. You do a lot and you narrow down. You tinker with different ideas and you focus on the ones you like and you refine, and you refine. That is what really unlocked for me, which is some of my, like, for example, I had clients that I was helping name a building, right? And if you've ever been part of naming, it's the most painful experience because you have to generate 1,000 names, write them all out, and the client hates them all. And then three or 4 rounds later, they go back to the second one you suggested. But the actual act of generating all those first names, that was so time consuming, right? This is now AI is giving me that first draft and I can pick because I have my own taste and my point of view. I can pick from all these and get to that short list much faster. So for my process, and we teach this in the class when we're talking about design solutions, right? If you spend the time to create a prompt or to create a GPT or to create a set of context that will allow the AI to iterate on your behalf and then only come to you then with a short list after it's done 1,000 ideas. We talk about it as infinite design, right? Prime the model, teach it what you want to teach it, let it go to time, give it a synthetic user to react to, give it the parameters that you're looking for, give it whatever it needs to know to do a good job. It can then now go to work and generate so many ideas and then come back to you with a list and then why they're great. and why they're interesting and why they're unexpected and why you haven't seen it before. So as far as the creative process goes, that first round still exists, but it's compressed immensely. So I'm
Mm.
excited about that.
You also mentioned 2022 when I think it was OpenAI released ChatGPT 3. Was that the pivotal moment when you recognized the power of the impact this would have on the creative industry? What were you doing prior to that, and how quickly? Because I'm sure a lot of people recognized the potential impact as well, but there must have been something that triggered you to pivot and to move so fast yourself with Dom to create this.
Well, I was a little bit nervous at first, like I said before. Like I was like a little like I was like listening to those people about like Terminator type scenarios. But then I really when I started to look back and like, wait a second, this is what we were doing back in 2016. We were turning language into text and then getting language back. That's not so scary. And then when I talked to it, I'm like, oh, this is exciting. This is just again a conversation partner. So I think that's what clicked for me, which is, can anybody now have someone to talk to, and how can we then explain that to others, that everybody now has a partner at work, now everybody has a partner at school, now everybody has a partner at folding laundry, right? Like that. I actually, one of my best favorite use cases for AI is the GPT app, which you can talk to directly, put it down on the bed and fold laundry and just riff ideas and just talk about
Uh-huh.
stupid stuff. Yeah. So I think we also, Dominic, my partner, he's more of like, oh, we probably, I call him first draft, not final draft. That's kind of how our partnership works, where he's the streamer that's already thinking like 3, 5 years ahead. And I'm like, wait, let's slow down. Let's make this great. Let's revise. I'm like the feedback guy, and he wants to keep moving forward. So he has lots of experience in this workshop format, in this teaching format. He's been lecturing. So when I was working with Dom, I'd say, hey, I'm using this tools. I think this is great. What can we do with this? He's like, I already got something in mind. Let's go turn this into workshops. Let's go turn this into something that we can, pass on to others, because there's processes for teaching this stuff. And so when we started developing the curriculum for Pratt, it was a matter of, actually our first semester was just a 6 weeks course. And then we was like, okay, we can build each one of these segments into a 12-week program, because there's so much to do.
Oh, well, I noticed that you've got some patented inventions. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, well, that was the one I had mentioned earlier, which was the work for the Postal Service, right? Using NLP to create an experience that would mimic the experience of the postal worker, but out on the street. It was again cutting edge at the time, but really it really broke for me when we didn't have to go to an engineer to make that happen. When GPT allowed us to, it started also writing code. 3.5 already started writing code very well. So it was, I think that was an exciting term for me. I was saying like, okay, this was the rudimentary rubbing six together version of this. And now we all have access to it, which is the keyboard.
Who'd you compete with?
Well, we have, there's a lot of competition out there. It's growing. Well, I think one of our big group is the big consultancies with the resources, and they're embedded, right? I mean, they have 100 people that are coming, they'll sit on every floor and they'll get all up in so these Deloittes and the McKinseys and whatnot, they're primed for it. They're change management, and I get it. I think I can see why. And then also another competition is the internet. I mean, these days, anybody who has a passion about something could learn from Khan Academy. They can learn from LinkedIn
Yeah.
Learning. They can learn from any number of influencers that I follow that are always showing me very cool things. So, I think what those large consultancies have is, okay, we'll come in and we'll take care of it for you. And then what the internet has is, oh, okay, if you have this personal passion, set aside these hours for yourself. So we found this kind of sweet spot of being, hey, we are going to help these organizations more of a one-on-one type experience, or 2 on 20 type of experience, where we're going to take your teams and show them how to think about this, demonstrate ways for them to think about it, and then actually have them do that thing, right? So where we stand out from the internet influencers is we're actually someone's walking away having done some AI work in their particular field. Where we stand apart from the big consultancies is we're not doing everything for you and implementing entirely new systems. We're helping you to define them together. So I think we're in the right place right now, and we're looking to grow clearly. But I think the competition is good. It's okay.
You were at Cannes this year, the annual ad industry get together in the south of France, and certainly by all accounts, it was in every person walking along the Croisette was talking about AI, and all the sessions, the Palais touching on AI. And you were obviously networking a lot. How do you from that, what you witnessed there and the conversations you had, what impact do you think AI is going to have, and how the industry either embraces it or how it evolves in terms of its as a business? Because clearly AI is going to have an impact on the ad industry in a radical capacity, probably more than many other industries.
I think that the process, the recipe for creativity is still going to exist. I think the importance of having talent in the building, or as it were, or in the organization, is still gonna be important. Having interesting insights that move people, if we're talking just purely advertising, is still going to be important. But getting there is going to be greatly improved with AI's help. I do think that the model, and I have to give credit to Wesley Terhar, who runs Media Monks, for having kind of explained it so clearly. The model of time and resources as a billing mechanism is, I think, in danger. I think that some agencies, those who haven't yet, start to think about charging for the deliverable, for the final product, and whether or not that it's not necessary that I need 30 people in a room to work on these graphics to make that, to make that car look amazing as it jumps over a gulch. We don't need that many people to do that anymore. We just need a few who have great taste. So I think there's a shakeup coming in that, and I'm wary to make these predictions. I don't run a network. I'm not in the C-suite, so I want to make sure that I'm talking from what I know. But as far as from on the ground, from what I saw at Cannes Lions, was things are getting faster and more efficient and effective. And I don't think that brands are going to pay for that old way and that old model. Now, the quality and the great stories that break through are still going to be a result of talent and effort, but the volume of that effort is going to be reduced. So I think that business model is in jeopardy.
Yeah, there's a couple of things there that spring to mind when you say that. I mean, I remember probably Cannes in around 2010, a presentation. It was about how the industry has to move away from billing for inputs, time and materials, to focus more on outputs and outcomes. Mm-hmm. Yet here we are still 2024, where most agencies are still working on inputs. So you can see the argument, the point you're making about this, and the guy from Media Monks is saying about the speed at which you're generating and getting to ideas faster. I could see a client going, well, hang on a second, why should I be paying these full-time equivalents all this time when you can get to something much quicker? I want to reduce the fee, and I still want to be paying for what you're delivering. But I'm not going to be paying you for the outcomes or for share of IP or anything like that. I could also see that a number of clients going where we've seen a trend to go for creativity going in-house. More clients going, well, actually, if we embrace AI in-house, we can have our own AI creative teams generating stuff and getting to solutions faster. And we dispense with these large holding company agencies that charge us these fees. But at the same time, and I'm sure you're seeing this from the work you're doing at Pratt, as you take people through these skills, this 12-week journey, they're developing essentially a new set of craft skills.
Mm-hmm.
And craft is still going to become fundamentally important to understanding, one, how to get the best out of these tools and these technologies, but also just the craft skills of understanding what is a good idea, what is a good expression, where there is some sense of elegance and differentiation. And all the things that have made great creatives great, stand out from the average, are still going to be there. So I don't know what the answer is. It feels like there might be something else that emerges that we haven't thought about in this new world. But I can't imagine the industry 10 years from now will be the way it was 10 years ago. It does feel we're in this period of great transformation in terms of the business model. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think it's a fascinating time. See who the people are, because I know people like Niles Leonard at Uncommon and his partners there are talking about radical change in business models, and they've been exploring that themselves over the last few years. So maybe it will be companies like Media Monks that will establish a new paradigm. But it must be very exciting for you to be at the heart of that, witnessing what's actually happening.
It really is. I mean, if I think about the creatives of my generation, we're lucky to be a part of this because we know how to communicate ideas, and we know the efforts of what it takes to polish and find something great. For the young creatives, I mean, I gave a guest lecture at my alma mater, Miami of Ohio, to freshman art students, fine art students. It was a mix of fine art painting students and then game developing students, freshmen. I don't think you call them freshmen anymore. I think that's politically incorrect, but first years. Well, anyways, the painters wanted to throw tomatoes at me. They didn't have any, luckily. The game designers were like, "This is awesome. I see what you're doing here." But both of them are in a prime position right now because of this change to be the operators of these tools and to be the ones to be counted on for these types of things, to create these things. And then, like I said, the folks of the older generations or my generation, where we know how to communicate, we're also going to be in kind of a good position. But overall, the size is going to shrink. The pool is going to shrink overall. To what it takes to get to something great is going to take fewer humans, just more refined taste or more talented humans. So I think an agency size is going to be different. I'm hesitant to say that because it's so disruptive, but I don't see it any other way.
I mean, you just mentioned young creatives there. There's also obviously a lot of older creatives that are facing and probably looking at this technology with some trepidation, thinking, "Oh, my job's going to go away." What would your advice be to creatives today? What should they do to who might be apprehensive about the integration of AI in their field? How would you counsel them?
Get in there and be the best at it. Play with it, use it, demonstrate your abilities to use it. And also, when you spend enough time with these tools, your work will get better. Because to get to a good idea, it takes time and effort, right? It takes revision, it takes being critical, it takes talking about it, feedback, all the things that I talked about that I love don't go away. So if you are someone who respects that process, try it with AI and you'll see how much more fun it can be, or how much more productive it could be in that sense. So I would say those who are saying this is AI is going to take my job. This is a t-shirt. I mean, this is an old t-shirt at this point. Not AI is not going to take your job. Someone who knows AI is going to take your job, right? Or that's as cliche as that is. It still holds true. I think that it's something about you taking control of your destiny and being confident in the stories you want to tell, right? If you have something to say, you have an interesting point of view on a thing, that's okay. AI will help you get there and demonstrate it more clearly to whoever is your audience.
You speak to organizations and therefore people who must be conscious of things like the ethics, governance, and safety. What impact is this having on adoption, and what worries do you have in that
Mhm.
area?
Well, I mean, there's a few subsets within that, right? That we need to consider, right? When we're talking about IP, right? There needs to be a quick sea change about how these companies are getting this data and who's getting paid or who's not getting paid for it. Right? I think there's the SAG, Screen Actors Guild, the Screenwriters Guild. They did a good job. They have a union. Fine artists don't have a union. They don't have a team of lawyers to go at it, and they also don't have an entity like Hollywood production houses to receive that that subpoena, as it were. So I think there's got to be a move by both the organizations that are creating these tools by scraping all this data to pay back those artists or to find ways to license that out. And then also for users to be responsible too, right? I mean, this is a hard one, but like, if you ask Midjourney for a painting in the style of Keith Haring, it will do a very good job of that. OpenAI will pretend it doesn't know what you're talking about, but but it would if you ask it the right questions and push a little bit harder on it. Where you ask it to describe the work of Keith Haring and then use that as your next prompt, right? So you can get around it, but it's up to the end user to make decisions on that. But then on the other hand, Picasso said art is theft. So we need to understand that, these tools or these large language models have been trained kind of like a human brain in that it's a soup of what it's seen. It's regenerating something new. It's not finding a link and sending you an image. It is generating an image from what it's seen. So we have to give it a little bit of a sense of leniency in that way. Nonetheless, it's uncanny how well it can recreate things if you ask it the right questions. So that's going to be, and that's something that both the users and the companies are going to have to create. When we're talking about safety, I think it's really important that, we think about how powerful these tools are. We talked earlier, open source versus closed source. Well, whatever your take on that is, I see both sides of the argument. The internet got to where it was today because of open source, right? But where the AI goes tomorrow might be a different story. Whether it needs to be more regulated or not is still remains to be seen. I'm more pro regulation at this point, but that's that's the companies, that's government. The user also needs to take some responsibility. So one of the classes that we teach both at the academy and at Pratt is in the ethics course is design your own AI constitution. So I've developed a prompt that is more of an interview, and it gives you things to react to and asks you your opinion about these things. So it talks about IP, it talks about safety, it talks about bias in the data, right? How do we combat all the bias that's been built into the data that we've fed these tools? And it asks you these questions and then it helps you define your own AI constitution so that every time you go back to use AI, are you thinking about these parameters that you put in place for yourself? So again, I think it's a dichotomy of the organizations and the end user being responsible for that. As far as P doom, I don't know if you know, like P, have you ever seen the phrase P doom? It's like the letter P and then in parentheses doom, the
Yeah.
probability of doom against a certain date. Mine decreases every single day. Mine gets lower and lower every day. I'm super excited about this. I think that the more people are starting to embrace these things, the more people that try this, which is part of my mission, is to get more and more, good people to try this out, then I think we're going to shape where this goes in a positive way. So ethics and safety, of course, big conversations in all of our teaching. But overall, I'm optimistic where it could go.
You've got children. You talked about
Yes.
your son. What are your feelings about the future of education and what lies ahead for the next generation?
I think that some things are going to remain the same. Critical thinking, doubling down on the art of communication, the doubling down of being suspicious of something or having your own opinions. These are key tenets of education and learning that are going to have to be reinforced and doubled down. I think that if we're talking about the practice of education, I'm very excited by a teacher being able to send home a one-on-one tutor with every curriculum, right? If we're talking about, I'm in New York with a very strapped for cash school system, being able to have that teacher create a lesson, write a lesson for that day, and then continue that lesson with that student at home one-on-one, and to be able to reevaluate that the next day, how much further along can we get? I'm pretty excited about that. I know that there are a lot of educators that are talking about this. In fact, I have an interview recommendation for you when we get there. But along that very line, I think education is going to change drastically in terms of, there was a lot of hand wringing about this is cheating and they're just going to ask GPT to write this essay. But if a teacher can be smart about bringing that discussion back into the classroom and allowing them to use GPT for that first draft, allow them to use, a tool to argue an idea or to outline a skeleton of a paper they want to write, or to even ask GPT to help with a math problem. I think that teachers need to own that and embrace that. And I think that education is going to be more democratized in a great way. There was a time when calculus wasn't a class, and now it is. And now it's a really hard class still. But you have a calculator, and that came into the classroom, and then people were doing things with math that were unheard of a few years before. So I think it could be a great evolution for us. So I'm teaching my kids to use it openly, to interrogate it in the right ways, and to not be lazy when it comes to using AI tools.
Oh, it filled me with some optimism. I probably had many conversations on more of the existential sort of on the doom side of education, but so that's uplifting. On your site, you mention that we're in the era of AI design, where the acceleration of artificial intelligence will mark a historic revolution to the innovation process. We use it to design more impactful and validated solutions. I think you talked earlier, you used the term infinite design. Can you discuss how this works?
Yes, I think it sounds, it's more simple than it sounds, in the sense that whatever inputs that we're putting into designing a solution to a problem are the same inputs that you can give to an AI. And it's about the quality of the input that you put in there. So what we do, like what we talked about with the classes, their assignment is to develop an entirely new product that doesn't exist based on a problem that hasn't been discovered, and a solution to a problem that is completely unique. And all that is with the blank slate for them. So they're using these AI tools to create the right ingredients for ideas to come out of it. And those right ingredients are, this is my target audience, or this is what I'm mining for in terms of insights, or this is the problem I want to solve, or this is the opportunity that I see, or help me find this opportunity. I don't even know where to begin, right? That humility thing that I talked about earlier. I love AI for that. So by doing so, you're able to then create kind of this right recipe, right? And the tools are able to iterate at such speeds that you could create 10 prototypes for a car before you actually have to actually create a prototype, right? You can have it be evaluated for its aerodynamic qualities, or what the user might think of it, or what problems does it solve, or is this possible in our current production process, or are we going to need materials from other planets just to make something like this happen? These are all questions you can ask and interrogate very quickly. So we're in an age of design in which we have to spend some time up front getting our story straight and setting it up, but then you can set it in motion, and it really gets really exciting because it will iterate ideas, give you a chance to evaluate and direct it, and get to solutions that you had not previously thought of. One of the exercises we do is first order, second order thinking, right? Which is, okay, what happens if the cost of going to the moon is greatly reduced to the price of a flight on Southwest Airlines, right? What happens? Well, there's this, AIs are really good at predicting not only the first order, like everybody gets to go to the moon, but the second order is now who can't afford to go to the moon, and now everyone's left behind. And the third order is, if we all leave, this is not the right example, but if we all leave and go to the moon, who's going to take care of the planet? Like there's he's thinking in this ideation that these tools can generate for us very quickly to help open our eyes quickly to say, oh, let's go this way or that way. So I think we're in to reiterate the question, we're in an era of design in which we're able to really move further and faster than ever because of the existing recipe for finding solutions is now accelerating that much more.
God, turn that conversation into a podcast in its own right. So many ways we can follow up on that. But anyway, maybe for another time. I mentioned recursive earlier and getting to AGI, and the pace at which new models are being developed. There's obviously issues around use of energy. Talk about having to get to nuclear to power these models, and lots of changes going to happen over the next few years. But it will happen, we will get to AGI, and given just what's happened and the impact and what you're describing, inconceivable what you're describing if you'd been describing it in 2016.
Yeah.
Where do you think it'll leave us with what will the impact be on the things that you've been doing, things I've been doing for years, storytelling and brand comms? Do you think things will be in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's so hard. I mean, it's so hard to think.
It is. I don't expect you to have an answer.
No. Yeah. I think that we're as I think knowledge work is going to be continue to be kind of chipped away at, as it were. I think I'm looking forward to the renaissance of craftsmanship, of whittling. Like, I mean, I actually had this plan mark that I'm going to go to culinary school when I'm 50. I have 5 years to get there. I had planned that before AI was even on the thing, but I think that's going to be a necessity in 5 years from now, if I want to continue to make money or to be creative in that way. So I think knowledge work is going to continue to be chipped away at. There's still going to be the need for operators, as it were, or people with taste to guide these things, but there's just going to be far fewer of us, fewer people necessary to execute that. Imagine what our life is like when our emails are talking to each other and answering their own question. The email's not going to exist, but our agents are talking on behalf of ourselves. I look forward to a time when we're all kind of like Labrador retrievers for a rich family that lives in Maine, like just sitting on the porch. Like, that's the life, right? That makes me able to I think the 4-day work week is approaching much faster and sooner than we think. I think UBI, the universal basic income, is going to be a necessity very soon. But if we can frame it positively, as scary as all those things are, our identities being around our jobs, whatnot, I think we're going to have to readjust how we think about what makes us happy and what helps us define ourselves. These things are also going to be happening around us. It's not going to be AGI's here, it's getting delivered tomorrow. It's on the truck, it's on the Amazon truck, and it's going to be here. I think it's going to permeate, and I actually am not qualified to decide what that line is. And I think that that line is up for debate. And I also think that it's not going to be a line. It's going to be a blurry fog, because these tools are going to recede back into the tools that we already use or into our lives. It's going to be less of a novelty or a place to go. But boy, it's hard to predict. I'm optimistic overall. I want to be. And I think that when we get to a point where, one of my favorite students was a scientist. She wasn't a Pratt, but she was we gave her kind of a private lesson, as it were, but her job is to study the effects of cancer on mice, or certain treatments against cancer on mice. And then down the hall, there's another group of scientists who are treating cancer in mice with a completely different storyline. And they never talk to each other. They barely see each other in the lunchroom. Right? But her new role was to find synergies between the labs. And she is a math person. She is science. She is formulas. She's not a communicator, as it were. Not to disparage her, but her thing was, math and black and white and formulas and math and math and math. So when I showed her how to talk to GPT about these very complex things that only an AI could really argue with, right? Because it has read all of the books that she's read and all the papers she read. Now it unlocked new creativity in someone who was less creative and more about empirical progress. So I think we're going to get at a point where all of these people who, or all these other experts, are going to have a new way to talk about what they love and are passionate about. That it's going to be a very positive thing when AGI comes into play all around us.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. I began the podcast as this experiment in serendipity. You mentioned early on about serendipity impacting you, but where has it played a big part in your life?
I think I talked about like that job in the Indies. I didn't know what it was before I showed up. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Being able to meet and see that process really informed my advertising career. Sitting next to Dominic, we were just happened to sit next to each other when he was in Germany and he transferred to the New York office. I think that's serendipity that I'm always gonna look back fondly upon, because he has this thinking, this innovation type thinking, this again, dreamer state. I'm more of a let's slow down and refine this type of state. I think this is a good match for what we're trying to achieve there. And I think also, to be honest, I think AI was something that I tried instead of avoided.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's serendipity or just, you know, or just stupidity, but I ran towards it. And so I'm grateful for having done that when I did, because I feel that I'm kind of on a path where I'm confident and comfortable where this is going, and I can also help to direct others in that way. So I think those three. And maybe the fourth one is I moved to New York and I met my wife the second day I moved here at the restaurant that I got a job at, which is pretty cool. So,
well, there you go. Yeah. She wouldn't be happy if you hadn't mentioned that.
Yeah.
All right, then. Well, personal questions, quick fire. What principles do you live by?
Be humble and be vulnerable. And I like talking to GPT about what I don't know and seeing what it can tell me, and AI can tell me. Experts are important in life. Having that, when I talk about feedback and dialogue and pushing things, if you're talking about advertising, let the director come with their opinion. Let this person who's the strategist tell you what they think first. Let the plumber to tell you what's wrong with the plumbing, because you're going to end up, in a foot of water if you don't listen to them. So I think there's value in respecting someone's expertise when they come into a conversation for whatever that is. And then, and I think just, be kind whenever possible. I think it's like, smiles go a really long way, and you make a lot more friends that way.
I agree. Who or what inspires you?
Well, I think the thinkers that are leading the charge in AI are inspiring me. I think Ethan Malik is inspiring. I don't know if you follow his work.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I think there are people who are out there pushing this and being evangelists for positivity as it relates to the AI field are inspiring, but I'd have to think of some more names for you. But I like gravitating towards those folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about your principles and what makes you human, but as humans, we all have to deal at times with uncertainty, self-doubt, fear, and you're leading the charge in a rapidly changing world of uncertainty. How do you deal with it?
Just being open to it. I know that there's meditation and tapping always helps. Mm-hmm. Right. I think, understanding philosophically that you can't change what tomorrow brings, and there's no point in dwelling on what happened yesterday, just being present. That really helps me to ground me when I'm starting thinking about where we are 5-10 years from now, whatnot. Just being present and being active in this certain situation that you can control is the only way to really take control, is to understand where you're at right now, what can you do about now, and that'll eventually lead to where you want to be if you don't try to get there in your mind ahead of time.
Great answer. What book would you recommend someone read?
Well, speaking of the future, AI 2041 is a really interesting book by Dr. Kai-Fu Lee and Chen Kui Fan. There's two authors. It's a really interesting It's a chapter by chapter fiction and analyzation. So there's a fiction story about, let's say, what happens in AI. Well, like one scenario that I love in that book is if our insurance premiums were fluid moment to moment by the decisions we make. So you have an AI that's part of your life that's helping guide your decisions so that you can keep your insurance prices down. Very interesting, right? Okay. Oh, that's great. Okay. I go for a run, my costs go down. I go, I choose to eat an apple versus potato chips. Right. 5%. But what happens when the AI convinces you not to fall in love with this person because they live in the wrong neighborhood? Right. And this is like kind of a Romeo and Juliet type story. But it's a really interesting kind of story about where this world could go with all these AI tools. And then the next chapter is, let's break down what was happening here. There's these algorithms, and this is possible in this way, and these tools are here, and these tools are not yet here. So it actually has 10 stories, 10 different scenarios, and then the actual technological reasons for why they might not be here.
Oh, that is on my list. I'm about to head to Europe for a couple of weeks vacation, so that's going to be on my reading list. There you go.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Also triggers the, like you were saying, first, second, third order consequences.
Right. Being able to think beyond, like, okay, the implications of this, but what are those other implications that we need to consider? And that's okay. They might be dystopian, they might be scary, but thinking about it and planning for it is, or trying to take the wheel and drive it in a certain direction or not direction is something we can do today. And then code intelligence is another one by Dr. Malik. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, he's teaching at Wharton. He's teaching innovation. He's also kind of pushing the boundaries of experimentation. The idea that we are the human and we have a partner, we are collaborating. I think that's right on. And I think more people should be thinking that way. So those are my two.
You might have just answered the next question, but any life hack you discovered that people should be aware of that might be AI related?
I use it just every day. Like, just don't think too hard about why you're using it. Just what movie should I watch? What should I make for dinner? What should I like? I don't like live on it per se, but any question that might burn too much energy in my brain, I go to GPT first, because again, I'd love to get feedback. I'd love to go back and talk back and forth and make those decisions. So, and then also, I think also there's value in thinking about building your own GPT. Like we talked about this a little bit already, Mark, like that, if there's something that's repetitive in your job, or if there's something that's repetitive in your day to day, is there a way to turn that into something that can always be there for you and always do that job well? Once you train it and once you get it to work the right way, you can now offload a lot of amazing things. So these are getting easier and easier to implement. And I encourage people to think about what can I really do to augment this process and make it easier for me, so I can spend more time hanging out with my kids or lounging on the couch or running.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aside from asking ChatGPT which doc or TV show you should watch, what's your recommendation for a show if someone might not have seen it that you think should be on their list?
Ooh, a show? Well, it might be poor taste to recommend other podcasts in a podcast, but
it's fine.
Let's go for it. Hey, two of them that I listen to intently is Last Week in AI. And these are two data scientists who are doing a rundown of the AI news that they're coming across and finding. It's very thorough. It's very quick fire. You need to have a notebook with you when you listen, but they're in the pulse of it. And then AI for Humans, on the other hand. So then what they're doing is they're taking these tools and demonstrating ways to use them in a more approachable way, in a fun way that really helps you illuminate what the possibilities are. So they're kind of on opposite spectrums. The Last Week they had like very nerdy, and I don't want to say it in that bad way, but a good kind of cool rock star geeky way. And then AI for Humans is another podcast that just helps to demonstrate things in an approachable manner. Yeah,
excellent.
And then of course the Impossible podcast at Just Possible Network.
This episode 251 about to come out. We're all about reciprocity and connecting other people just to see what happens through random collisions. So you open for me creating some random collisions with other guests that you might not otherwise come across.
So I think, and this is not self-serving, but my partner Dominic has amazing views on these topics that are opposite to mine. He's also very good at articulating these things. I think if you wanted to dive deeper on infinite design in a way, he speaks very clearly about those things and has interesting points of view. Totally different interview, up to you or not. And then also I was thinking about this when we're talking about education. One of our clients is Georgetown University, and they have this team called the Center for Learning Design, Candles is for short. And the team that runs that is amazing. So Randy Bass, Eddie Maloney, or Molly Chihak, I'll give you their name. I'll send you their names because I can spell them out instead of articulating. But they are really making good forward strides in terms of keeping their faculty not only up to date about what AI is, but giving practical demonstrations of how it can work. So we actually help them with workshops for their faculty, but they have also created so many resources for their faculty to really help improve where AI can go take education and pedagogy. So they've been really inspiring, and in fact, they inspired us to work more closely with Pratt about how we are going to get AI more ingrained into all of the curriculum, not in just our certificate. We think that there's opportunity for institutions across the spectrum to really improve the way they teach and educate. So I think they have some interesting things to say on that topic too.
Okay, well, you've answered the question, who do I interview next? But I also would like to generate connections between you and other guests on my show. So if you're up for that, I'll be
I missed that.
connecting you with.
I'm sorry, I answered that wrong. Excuse me.
No, it's fine. So it's fine. I'll look out for some. Once this goes live, I usually connect you with a couple of ex-guests who I think you might get some benefit from colliding with.
I'd love that.
Yeah,
yes, please.
So. Right. Well, anyway, that was longer than we had scheduled. But yeah, Tony, thank you very much for all your time and your generosity of your time and great answers. And just I think you talked at the beginning about who you are as a human, about being the hard work and being open, having humility to change your mind. But I think what you're doing with the work you're doing, I think you're definitely probably changing a lot of people's minds and perspectives on the world for the better. So keep up the good work and look forward to continuing to see what you do and staying in touch. Maybe further conversations down the line.
Yes, please. Yes, thank you for this platform, Mark, and for all you do too. We're asking these interesting questions of all these different interesting people. So I'm honored to be one of them.
Tony, thank you very much, and we'll speak soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all for now, folks. Now here's my ask of you. Please follow this podcast on Apple or Spotify or whatever player you use. Also, please subscribe to our new Random Collisions newsletter. We really are working to build a global community of action takers, action engines of people that really care about the problems that need solving. Thank you very much, and see you next time.